Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquel Rudenberg and Christina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning.
Good morning, everybody. I am so happy that we finally get to speak to one of my new favorite people. Sorry, Raquel, no offense. Lauren is a social justice warrior. I think we met maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months ago. I have no concept of time. But Lauren is the founder of GiveABeat. The website is giveabeat.org. And their mission is to reduce the harmful effects of incarceration through music production, DJing, and other education programs that transform individuals and inspire communities to take action. When I saw this website, I just fell in love with how it dripped with social consciousness, how much of a champion Lauren was. We had one conversation I think I fell in love with in 5 minutes and was like, I just need to talk to you all the time about all the amazing things you do. So Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy for us to understand more about the prison system, about what GiveABeat does, and to find out more about what you're doing to make the world so much better.
Thank you so much for having me here. And the feeling is mutual, Christina. So I'm honored to be here. And yeah, just was blown away when I met you two and your energy and how brilliant you are and fun and conscience, your conscience and everything.
Oh.
So yeah, no, it's great. It's kindred spirit. So
absolutely. And I know that Raquel was so excited when we spoke about this podcast episode. So I'm going to jump straight in because I know your personal history and some of it, but I'd love for the rest of our bombshell babeses to find out. So tell me about how and where you grew up, how your life shaped you becoming this social justice warrior that you are today.
Thanks for asking that question. I like telling this story. I grew up in a place we used to call it behind the Orange Curtain, Orange County, California, notoriously Republican. I was a teenager growing up pretty sheltered in Irvine, and not a surprise because that's kind of the intention of the community. It was known at that time, it was known as the best place to raise your kids in the United States, which meant a lot of conformity that I was not into. So I played that game for a little while, and a little kind of a funny story, but my Spanish class had the opportunity to, in my high school Spanish class, had the opportunity to go to Brazil for a Spanish speaking field trip, which is hilarious when you realize that, of course, they don't speak Spanish in Brazil. They speak Portuguese, but our parents didn't really understand that. So we got to go party down in Rio de Janeiro as 16-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And what I thought was going to be just a party and a wonderful time was a total shock to me. And growing up in my sheltered world, to see children on the street begging for bread while we're sitting there, spoiled 16-year-olds drinking Shopee beer. And yeah, it just blew me away. It was just, I couldn't believe that I was being brought up, that we were being brought up to allow this to be happening on our planet. I mean, it's crazy how I didn't understand that this type of poverty existed. And yeah, it really shook my world. I came back from that trip, and I just felt like I was on this mission. I have to tell everybody, like, there's children taking care of other children. Like, how insane is that? And the answer that I got from so many people was like, that's just the way the world is, Lauren. You can't, and I could not believe it. So it was really difficult to come back to this sort of superficial reality that I lived in, and realized that people either didn't care or they didn't know what to do, or, accepted it, whatever. So, yeah, I was in search of the truth. Like if I've been lied to about or kept from the realities of human rights abuses and realities that I experienced, like what else am I being lied to about, or what else don't I know? So I went on a quest to educate myself and uncovered a lot of really horrible things about the United States, being involved in Central America, all the, just our foreign wars and just all of that, just a huge wake up call, And so I proudly got labeled. I started a club in high school called Students for Social Responsibility. And we threw a punk benefit for Nicaraguan refugees at my senior year in high school. I proudly became known as this socialist, labeled a socialist in my school newspaper. But yeah, that kind of started my world of little kind of rebelling against the norm and being driven by justice, and then was very validated. This was long time, but probably you guys were maybe not even born yet, during Live Aid. Do you remember Live Aid?
Yes.
Sorry.
I think we are.
It's the braids. It's throwing everyone off.
That's a compliment. It's a compliment. But some of the audience might not remember Live Aid. Not everybody knows about it. It was incredible, right?
Yeah. It really was. It was just one of the first waves of global social consciousness, right? In my mind, when I don't know when the first concert actually was. Was it the 80s? Was it early?
It was 1985. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. And it just was like, here's uniting for a common cause on another level. And no one had done it before. And in retrospect, you're like, why not? But
yeah, I mean, I think George Harrison actually, I think is recognized as doing the first kind of real big. It was a concert for Tibet, I believe, Freedom Tibetan Reading Concert. But there. So not to correct you, but I think the seed had been planted, but not on that level. It was a global level. Remember, we had Philadelphia and London. All these musicians came together and recognized the injustice of having millions of people starving to death in Ethiopia. And I think, of course, there was a lot of critiques about how that was done and how the aid was sort of this colonizing form of aid. But the reality is that it brought people together through music. So I talk a lot about this because it was super influential to me as a teenager. I mean, that was it, really. I mean, that leads me right to where I am today, using music to bring people together to address injustice. And, specifically as it's related to the continent of Africa or the African diaspora, just because all the damage that white people have done to that continent and to Black people around the world. And so I've always been driven by that, because it's just great. This injustices have been happening for the entire history as we know it. And so that was hugely influential to me. And I just dreamed of that day that, what am I going to do with music? What's my role? Where do I find this job that describes lead a social movement through music to make it,
where's that job description?
Back down the world. There, I'm like, shit, I'm going to have to do it myself. I'm going to have to carve my own path. And luckily that's Sagittarius in me. And some crazy nights on the dance floor in San Francisco where my mind could go into these places of how am I going to do this? So flash forward. So that was my upbringing. And Christina, thanks for asking me that question, because it really did all start then.
I love that. And I have to give the credit to Raquel. Raquel does just so that everyone knows.
Thanks, Raquel.
Bombshell Babes is out there. You realize I just live in the moment. And Raquel goes through and goes, oh, this would be a really interesting topic.
I'm the super nerd. I nerd out on everything.
But I love that. What I highlight is, I don't know if any of you listening out there, you have a thing that really drives you as a teenager or as a young person, or even as a reimagined person. I love to see people who are one career in, and they have a transformative moment and they change what their real passion is. I love the story of how you go and continue to create space for the ideas to make those happen. And I think that is a really important, resilient and responsive quality that we need to have with people going forward. And a lot of our listeners are very entrepreneurial, very creative. They're constantly looking for solutions. And I think it's really important to note that what you said was you found ways to continue to get inspired and then continue to look for how you particularly fit. And if you don't fit into someone else's vision, how you create that for yourself was huge. So tell me, just on the end of that, how did GiveABeat become the seed that grew out of all the other seeds that you might have looked at? What were the forces that came together for GiveABeat?
I had been working with another organization for about 10 years, doing work in South Africa and Kenya, and all using the power of the dance music community. So I'll back up a little bit and then catch up to that question, Christina.
Sure, okay? Do whatever you like.
Okay. The chronology is like throwing me off. Because a lot happened on that dance floor in San Francisco. So I need to go back there.
Oh, we got to go there
right now.
We do.
So, well, first of all, I want to say that I feel incredibly lucky and grateful that I have found my path. I mean, I don't expect other people to find I hope that they do. And of course we thrive seeing other people find their path. And when they're driven by a just cause, I think that's where you got it, where it is, and I think giving back and feeling like you're making a difference is the best drug out there. So, I mean, that's fulfillment, I think can be for a lot of people. Okay. But I would say I've been extremely lucky, right place, right time, just found my thing. Wasn't, had, I guess, the privilege to know that if I went out on a limb, I had like a solid place to come back to, a supportive family, So, I mean, I feel, incredibly privileged and lucky that I get to do what I'm doing and that I had the opportunity to carve my own path. And so I was lost for many years, trying to figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to do this. I wasn't fitting into any job, role. I went into teaching for a little bit, thinking, okay, if I can influence young people to grow up to make a positive impact, maybe I'll do that. But I found dance music, to be honest. I actually was teaching preschool in San Francisco, and my very, very good friend, and I'm thinking about it right now because I just talked to her this morning, Rebecca Liebernick. We were working at a restaurant in San Francisco together. So I was teaching preschool during the day and waiting tables at night. And she just saw my hippie heart. She's like, if you are a true hippie, you need to come out and dance with me and get into tech out house music. I didn't know anything about it. I was 30 years old. What the hell? I kept thinking, I wish I was born in the 60s, or I was born in the 60s, but I wish I was a teenager in the 60s. I would have been out in Central Park, dancing, Grateful Dead, whatever. Mm-hmm. But so she recognized all that in me, and she insisted, you have to come out. So I said, okay, what is this dance music thing? So I went out to hear Mark Farina in San Francisco, Mushroom Jazz show. And that was it. I'm like, this is the most incredible place where all these people are coming and they look, of course in San Francisco, right? So it's just the extreme of that, this freedom to be who you are, come as you are, connect with other people, feel the love. And of course, there was certain things in that environment that added and made it easier to feel the love. So all of that,
really oxygenated air. That's what.
Yeah, yes. It was the base. But still love that heavy bass line, that funky bass line. I would say funky bass line. But that was, it was just huge for me. And as a someone who was like trying to find my thing in this world, found that scene, and I went in deep into the house music scene for about a year and a half. And during that time, I just found it. I just had an epiphany. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a movement in the dance music community to take all this incredible energy and care that people have, and consciousness and awareness, and take it from the dance floor and address real social problems and injustices. So
that's amazing. And it's amazing. I love the serendipity. I know that you say it's luck, but I believe in luck to a certain extent, but I also believe in in commitment, resolution, and continuing to put yourself in the right situation, because you can't get lucky if you're not there.
And takes vision.
I think so. And even if that vision is not, I find that there's a great element of serendipity. At a certain point, you have to let the universe just bring things to you and create enough space for that to happen. But I love that that's, just looking at how you were growing up, your epiphany about knowing what you want to do, and then following your joy, so that the universe just kind of plopped on how you go about doing it, which is a wonderful way to take me into the next kind of the next thing that I wanted to ask you about was, we all know how transformative music is, right? And I want to know what you know about music therapy, why it's so transformative, why it's such an important tool for rehabilitation, because I want to kind of see how you feel music was such an important part of developing GiveABeat for the prison, or the justice system, I should say.
Yeah, I would say that, I would love to learn more about the science behind music therapy. That's an area I want to explore some more. So I can't necessarily really speak too detailed around that, but I can, obviously say that the transformative power of music, and whether it's a creative outlet, whether it's the healing, bringing diverse people together. I mean, when you're with diverse, if you bring diverse people together and you're open and you feel like your heart is open and your head is open, anything can come out of that. So someone can plant a seed, an idea in your mind that you never thought about, that has a different way of thinking. I mean, that's huge. That can be life-changing. And as it was for me, because those conversations that I talked about, that happened, at the after party or, whatever, after those experiences and dancing experiences in San Francisco, those were where a lot of those ideas came from. Mm-hmm. And so that really gave me, the inspiration to feel like I had something big to do. I could make a big impact in this world while I'm on it and in it, through the power of music. So I would say, at the way that music works for our program, for GiveABeat, again, just having that it's liberating feeling of hearing music, right? I mean, such a mood changer. We all know when we put on a good song and we're by ourselves and we like dance around our apartment.
Oh, every day. Every day now. BTS Dynamite. I am so not ashamed to say that. I just flail.
It's just, right? It's just so liberating. So, no doubt that those powers of liberating aspects of music can have a powerful impact on folks that are incarcerated. I spoke to this one man who's amazing, and he was telling me about how he used to set up in his cell. He took pieces of cardboard and made a fake turntables and mixer out of cardboard. And in his cell, and he would imagine in his head DJing a 2-hour set. I mean, it's incredible. So that's one example. I got a chance to go when we first launched our prison electronic music program, which we'll talk more about, but this is our kind of landmark program that's funded by the state of California. We are part of a group of organizations that are part of Transformative Arts. It's part of the California Arts Council. When we first launched that program, and I got to go witness the very first group of guys at California City that completed our course. And we were invited, they were doing a Cancer Relay for Life event at the prison, an outdoor event, and 300 guys participating that raised something like $10,000 between them and their families for cancer, which I thought was incredible in and of itself. So the guys in our first class got to DJ outdoors on the yard while this relay was going on. And they played, one of the guys picked Mark Farina, Mushroom Jazz. It was hard not to cry. I mean, that was the most incredible feeling to see them. And after after that one kid's set was done, and I'm looking at this kid thinking, Luis, he was just uplifted. I mean, he was on another plane, from having this experience of playing music like that. And I asked him how he felt, and he said elevated.
Oh.
And you could just see it in his eyes. And I'm just looking at this beautiful person, thinking, how has society failed that this, I mean, literally, he's just beautiful. I mean, it didn't matter if he was beautiful or not, but he would just 25-year-old kid, had everything, just radiating this positive energy. And how did he get there? And systems. He said, I'm allowed to swear. So I'll tell you, it's totally fucked up.
I agree.
So that actually leads me into something that I wanted to talk to you about, which is the U.S. justice system. So Christina and I were talking before this interview about how prison systems in general oftentimes really are on the outskirts of our peripheral. I mean, they're there and things are happening, but unless you know people who are in systems, it can be very invisible. And that's even in Canada, which is a different system, of course, than it is in the States. So can you just inform us a little bit so we all understand the system better? What are people going to prison for generally? What's the gamut? Can you just educate us on that?
There's a lot to say. So just going to your first question or comment, people think it's on the peripheral, but it's not. So half of Americans have had a close family member who's been incarcerated.
Wow.
That's family. So everyone knows someone who's been incarcerated. Right. And imagine the impact, the worry you have if your brother or cousin or brother-in-law or whatever gets arrested and gets sent to jail or prison. And it might be jail. Yeah. Incarcerated wouldn't necessarily mean prison, jail. So, or juvenile hall. Right. But half of Americans have had that experience. So half of the Americans have been worrying, have spent time worrying about this person, what they're going through, paying fines, going to court, fighting the wrongful charge or rightful charge or whatever it is. So think about that impact on this country. I mean, that's insanity. And of course, we know the racial disparity is through the roof. I mean, it's beyond. I don't have all the statistics off the top of my head, but for every charge, I mean, it's night and day. It's like, if you have an armed robbery and you're Black, you might spend 10 years in prison, to armed robbery and you're white and you have access to legal counsel, I mean, just whatever there's the racial difference. And then of course there's different types of crimes. Somebody who has to commit a white collar crime, a little pat on the hand, slap on the hand, or they pay whatever they need to pay, versus someone who's committed a crime for survival because they need to feed their families, or they grew up in an area and didn't have the schools, better schools and after school programs. And they had a lot of traumatizing events happening at home and in their communities. And they're just so much more prone. And we can talk about trauma, because that's a huge, huge, huge aspect of who's sitting in prison. Everyone's had trauma. When I first started going into prison, the conversations I had with some of the men, almost all of them started their incarceration when they were teenagers. And you're looking at these men who are 10, 20, 30 years in that went to prison when they were 16 and 17, 18, lived their whole lives.
In prison?
Yeah.
Like little boys still?
Yeah, little boys still. Yeah. So think about that we're still punishing people that are getting to be old men for something that happened, that they did when they were teenagers, that surely they got led into that situation because they didn't have the support system and they didn't have what they needed to have a fulfilling, have safety and a fulfilling life. the good news is people are waking up and they're starting to create reforms and changes, but the system is rotten to the core. I mean, the whole thing was built to basically enslave, to continue from slavery, Jim Crow era, and continue to make a profit off of Black folks, and put them in the system and take away their right to vote, take away their power. We can see right now how vicious the movement is on voter suppression, and how blatant it is, right? I don't know how much of that you've witnessed in Canada about the US system, but it's really, yeah, go ahead.
A little bit. I mean, we're watching news, obviously social media, but I'm sure there's much that we don't know about.
Yeah. So there's so much voter suppression going on. And I think it was right after the civil rights movement and, they got past the right to vote from all of that effort, years and years of fighting. I think it was Nixon that said, all right, now what are we going to do? Let's declare a war on drugs and put them away. And then for drugs. So drugs weren't even a problem back then when they declared a war on drugs. I think like the poll from the US public was like number 10 on the list of concerns. I mean, it was just not even an issue. And they declared a war on drugs. And then, of course, Reagan came along. This went on for some time. And then Reagan came along and made this huge thing against drugs. And then we know about crack getting, brought into Black neighborhoods and low-income neighborhoods. And then the laws became super strict against crack. But cocaine was fine because that was, white people were doing cocaine. So this became this huge discrepancy. And it just grew and grew and grew and became this monster system that was really such a whole industry. You know that they even have trade shows, prison trade shows. So you go to these trade shows and they're selling anti-suicide outfits, and it's an industry. And I could go on and on. So just stop me. I've got lots of statistics and aspects.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Really quickly, can you just tell us what prison is like for people? So when they're in it, because we're gonna kind of go into restoring dignity in prisons through music and music healing. But I just want people to understand, and for myself, because I don't understand, what is the prison system like for someone who's living that day in and day out?
So there's a lot of different levels. Where we do our prison electronic music program at California City is level 2 versus Kern Valley State Prison, which is a level 4. I'll give you a picture of Kern Valley State Prison. You walk up, on this dirt road outside of this town, 2 hours north of LA, there's so many incarcerated people that they have 2 major prisons on the same road. Each one contains 3,500 people, men. You go down this road, there is not a blade of grass in sight. Like there's just no life. There's giant concrete, they just look like people are encased in like giant concrete, kind of buried above ground in a way. That's what it looks like. It's so disgusting. And this is where we put human beings and lock them up in these 6x9, these little cells, 2 people to a cell. They are in there for 23 hours a day. In some of these maximum, it depends on what tier they're on and what cell block and what yard.
23 hours.
And it depends on the yard. So unless they're involved in programs, so I'll say, I don't know everything, obviously. I'm kind of so correct. So if anyone's listening and I'm kind of misstating a few things, please accept my apologies for that. But there there are yards. So each prison has different yards, and they have different levels, and they have different cultures and different things going on, different programs that different yards are allowed to have versus others. So, just there's a lot of that segregating people based on all different reasons. But some of them, 23 hours are in the cell, and they only come out to eat, and they get their time outside, their hour outside. And if they're in certain programs, then they come sign out and they get let out for whatever that particular program. But there's no just wandering around. I mean, this just in those particular yards. Someplace like California City is different to level 2, and they're sleeping in dorms, and there's a lot more mobility there. So it depends on the security level. But yeah, it's really disgusting and just shocking that we continue to treat humans this way, and that we still have solitary confinement. I mean, how sickening is that? It puts somebody, like, what good is that going to do anybody? Can you imagine the claustrophobia? Now, I just think that we have so much to learn from people who've had to go through this system, this strength, the inner strength that somebody has to make it through, to survive that, to forgive themselves, to like somehow find peace and be in this other level of making it through. They've had to find peace somehow. They've had to forgive themselves for what they did, what got them there, or they were whatever decision they made that put them in that wrong place at the wrong time, or whatever that was. They've had to forgive other folks, and had to do so much growth and find ways of coping, which is where, the arts really come into play. And that's where, again, where there's wonderful organizations like Transformative Arts through the California Arts Council, the Justice Arts Coalition. I recommend people check out the Justice Arts Coalition. It's a coalition of all these arts-based prison groups, and just see the art and the theater and the drumming and, and the electronic music and all of this that is happening in these programs is really phenomenal. And that's where the healing and transformation is. And yeah, I just think that we have so much to learn. And not like it's those folks' job to teach us and educate us, but it's just for the betterment of everyone to get close, get proximate with folks who've been through the system and survived it, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and collaborate and work together. I think that could be the upside of this entire disaster, is that if we can get people out and get them home and support them in the reentry, so they can take all that stuff that they learned and dealt with, and then not have any more barriers to their getting their lives doing what they want to do. Like, how incredible is that?
Yeah. And I think that's you and I were talking earlier about the creativity through adversity that really comes up. And, the unfortunate having such a restrictive environment and being put under such extraordinary pressure, which is an understatement, in every way. But, tell us about the kind of art that comes out of it. I know you've touched on it, but the kind of people that you've seen that have done these incredible things.
So I recently found out about something called trench art. Have you heard of it, either of you?
No.
So yeah, this wonderful young woman who has volunteered for GiveABeat in the past, she resurfaced and she wanted to get involved and volunteer her time. Her name's Julia, and just because it was so meaningful to her, she wanted to get back involved. But she was telling me something called trench art, and I'm fascinated with it, but it's art that was made in the trenches during war.
Wow.
And so whether it's, taking gun casings and turning it into, just whatever that is being created to help people survive, literally sitting in the trenches during war, during battle. That's kind of this parallel I'm seeing, right? And so I know that people will make anything. I understand that threading or taking different pieces of clothing that are different colors, and somehow turning it into a patch on your prison clothes, that just something like simple like that. And just all kinds of things that people are making with whatever tools they can find. I can hardly describe them, but I would love to follow up with some links to these types of things, because I think it's really fascinating and wonderful to share. And I think that really starts to humanize, the biggest challenges that we have for folks who don't feel connected to the prison system, aren't really understanding that it's all on us. I mean, this has all happened under our watch. But to stop being us and them, and realize these are these are our brothers and sisters who had a different path, and they're sitting in these inhumane.
Is that not the song of this year? These are humans, people.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes. And yes, we need to stop the othering. I mean, we talk about that with all the racism that we see, this continued division of people in the othering. So I think art can do that. I think seeing the art that's coming out of prison and sharing that is essential to start to change this narrative and humanize and continue to humanize folks. So I love art and music to be a medium for that. I like to be a medium for that. So I'll share some links to this work that I'm finding. It's really astounding. But, bringing it back to my personal experience, I have a good friend. His name is Russell Wardlow. He's incarcerated in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's an incredible thinker, writer, poet, human, like activist, just all the things that he wants to do in the world to make a positive social impact. But his work is incredible. His website is prose, Prose, proseofacon.com. And all his incredible work there. And we're excited about continuing to collaborate and get his work out there and get it produced musically. That's it. And we have several other projects and little side things in the works. But I know, Christina, you're going to share a piece.
We'll share a little bit later.
Yeah.
But yes, incredible poetry. And I think that was the other thing. You some of your programs, one of them was about the power of a DJ name, and giving a name to the you that you want to be. And I think that's another really amazing highlight, that what you do with GiveABeat is you empower these people who are so creative and so passionate to step into the shoes of their best version of themselves, their best new version. And I mean, I just wanted to very quickly, because we have so much that we want to talk to you about. But with these people, what are a couple of examples of people who you've really seen step up and transform, through the GiveABeat program specifically?
Well, a couple of years ago, we did a graphic design program with youth that had all been through the juvenile justice system. And there was one young guy, and his name's Sam. And I have to give him a call soon. I owe him a call. We've been emailing. But he had been in a really dark time. And it grabbed his interest. He saw this poster about learning to DJ or learning to create a brand for a DJ. Because it was a graphic design program, but it was all around music and all around driven by the whole music experience, electronic music experience. So he wasn't really sure what it was going to be, but he's like, okay, there's DJing, there's music, there's graphic design. I got to get myself in there. And he even took the wrong bus the first day and didn't make it. And he could have given up at that point, but he didn't. He's like, there's something there, that's something creative that I can hold on to and can maybe help me get out of the darkness. And he did it. He got himself there. The next class, he got through all the classes, and he said he transformed. He said that, if it wasn't for that class, like he doesn't know where he would have been. And now it got him into the light. And he literally said that and so that was really incredible to hear.
Ugh.
And to witness that. It was dark, it was bad. And even the other caseworkers around him said they just could not reach him. They didn't know, they were afraid they were going to lose him and this wouldn't be able to reach him. So that was, incredibly powerful to witness that. And I'd love to do that 1,000 times over. And like I said, I'm witnessing what's happening with Russell, and the fact that he's inside and he knows that we are reading his work and we're sharing it, and that we're working collaboratively on projects. And when he shares that with the other guys around him, it sends ripples of hope through his whole community inside the prison. So it spreads. It's Christine, I think we just launched our new reentry program. And this is where we're going to really start to see more of the power that of the impact of the work that we're doing now that folks are on the outside, and we can help them, we can support them in their creative career pursuits. Inside the prison, I don't teach that program directly. We have an amazing program director and teaching artists, and what they witness is incredible. But one of the really powerful aspects of this type of program is, again, it's the camaraderie that exists in the classroom, and people kind of coming together through music.
Yeah.
It's that liberating feeling. Prison is so racially segregated, and that's oppressive for everybody, of course. So when they get to be in this class, in this room where the music, people break down their barriers, come away and feel connected. And now, and that has an effect on even violence. Out in the prison, because now they're, that spreads. And we did hear about that after one of our programs, and these guys from different, backgrounds were connecting through the program. They started a basketball game where they had different races were playing each other in a basketball game, which was unheard of. So that what happened in this music classroom was taken out of that classroom and taken onto the yard and created this connection with different folks. And that is really amazing to hear about.
That's incredible. So transformative. So I want to ask one final question before we kind of close out, but we have a lot of people in our community who have massive hearts, who are caring and are in the art scene. A lot of them are entrepreneurs, and very socially minded. So you've done this for your whole life basically now, worked on various programs. So what advice would you have for someone who has a big idea, and is waiting for their moment, or trying to bring it all together to make something happen like you did?
I would suggest volunteering for another organization that is doing something similar to what you want to do. I think that's important. There's a lot of people who organizations that could use that kind of support. So I think kind of putting in some of that time into someone who's already doing the work is great. Obviously, you're going to learn a lot, but I think that's just a nice way to get started while you're working on your idea. And then I think it's not being afraid to be vocal about it. That's how I manifested this, is I talked out loud about it, and things happened. The universe, it was right in front of me. But if I was kind of holed up in my feeling that I couldn't talk about it until it was ready, or I was working on it privately, I don't think it ever would have happened. It was just being out there. And you don't have to say, I'm going to do this. You could say, I would love to do this. This is what I would love to do, or I'm dreaming of it, whatever. And so I think a lot of people they hold back from doing that because they don't want to put something out there and set expectations.
Yes, that is me 100%. It's the whole imposter syndrome. It took me years to start a book because I was like, someone else has written this book. It's always that. I love that advice. That's amazing advice. And what about, how can people support GiveABeat?
So definitely, we always need donations. I mean, our programs run on donations, so I have to put that out there. But yeah, I mean, go to our website. On our Get Involved page, there's a form to fill out if somebody has some sort of skill or some specific offering that they think would be a beneficial resource for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking for video editors and that's one area that we actually really need help on, is coming up with creating video content. We don't have that. And that's really become essential for working on. But getting involved in the larger transformation of the criminal justice system, whether it's with GiveABeat or any other organization, just they're everywhere. There's so many. There's a way to help with on so many different levels. So that's one of the things about this system and getting involved in this work. It's not this kind of bigger, gigantic, intangible cause like stopping climate change, which we all have to work hard to do. Believe me, I'm not saying that we don't need to, we need to continue to live on this planet. So that's important.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that, but sometimes those things feel intangible. Like I can't stop carbon emissions from airplanes, I'm saying. But with this system, there's everybody can get involved, whether you can mentor someone who's getting out of prison, you can communicate with someone who's inside, just writing letters to folks inside, just for folks inside to know somebody cares about them. That is really powerful. That's something that simple. I worked with a group of women. We did care packages for women when they got out their first 24 hours and put together all this essential needs for women. That was huge. There's book reading where you can, I know this beautiful organization in Texas where you can read with a mother whose incarcerated. You can read a book with the child and then they record it and bring it to the mother. Like there's things like that, really, I'm not saying it correctly, but I think it's called the Texas Book Project.
I love that. Yeah.
Like that's a beautiful thing. So people are being innovative. They're figuring out all these different ways to get involved to make an impact. And one of the biggest things is people can do is hire people who have records, like be proactive in that way. And I think in the United States too, there's tax write-offs if you do that. So there's some other benefits if folks need that kind of incentive. But hiring people and voting, being politically active, because the legislation changes. It's happening. A couple of the guys that I've gotten to meet recently were juvenile lifers. They were sentenced to life in prison as youth. And because of advocates who changed the laws and pushed bills through the state legislature in California, they changed that. And all these juvenile lifers are getting their cases re-looked at and they're getting out.
That is incredible. And I think that's just such a wonderful thing to kind of close us out on, is that if you don't start and if you think that someone else is going to save us, then you're going to let other people have control over the human race. And I think that's a hugely important thing to highlight. And one of the things that is so inspiring about you, Lauren, is that having not ever said that out loud, you are the type of person that refuses to accept what is if it's not right. And I think that all of us that are listening, I think everyone, I mean, I'm gobsmacked. I'm so inspired. I just, as you're talking, thinking about all the little things that I can do, the big things that I can do, how to continue to contribute to the community. And I think that you will have inspired just endless numbers of people and will continue to help people understand that we are the change and we have to be those people, because it's us. We're human beings. We're all made up of each other and ourselves, without getting too meta. So thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for what you do. And you do it with such generosity and such endless spirit. And I think that we all have a social responsibility, but a soul responsibility to be better. And so on that note, I want to read you a poem by Lauren's friend, Russell Wardlow, and it's called The Law of Correspondence. And it was posted approximately a year ago today, give or take a few days. Your heaven is my earth. Your hell is my dirt. As above, so below. The sky is but a reflection, just so you know. And space also, for that matter. So to combust and big bang your reality, I'll split your atom. Then the great veil and illusion you believe and live in will shatter. And at your feet will be shards, reflecting images of the earth. But what may mystify you most is how did everything become reversed? Our wonderful darlings, thank you for listening. I hope that you'll make incredible choices for today and tomorrow and this week. And Lauren, do you have anything else you would like to say to our wonderful babeses out there?
There's one more very important name I forgot to mention, and I would encourage everybody to please look him up. He's very well known to many. His name is Brian Stevenson. And he will tell you about the 4 essential components to changing the world. But he has been an advocate for incarcerated people for decades. And his organization is called Equal Justice Initiative. But he gives us the recipe. And so I subscribe to his way of thinking. And my organization, GiveABeat, employs those key components. So, and there's no one who can tell the history of mass incarceration like he can, and give us the real truth, and then all the hope and the keys to making a difference. So that's
incredible.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.